Welcome to everyone from around Massachusetts and the country. This event was featured on the AARP Virtual Community Center. I am Teresa Choklos, an AARP Speakers Bureau volunteer, and I am privileged to give presentations on a variety of key topics of interest to people age 50 and older. Today, we will learn about food preservation with an introduction to canning, easy refrigerated pickles, and preserves. This is the first in the three-part series, and we will provide the link to the other events in the follow-up email. For fun, please write in the chat where you're from and maybe why this topic is of interest to you. Also include maybe whether or not do you garden, and if you do garden, what do you grow? We know that your brain health is important to you, and with this webinar, we encourage exploration, healthy eating, and possibly a new hobby. For lots of great resources about brain health, go to AARP's Brain Health Resource Center at aarp.org/brainhealth. AARP maintains a deep focus on the health, financial security, and personal fulfillment of people age 50 and older and their families. And you'll find that reflected in our offerings and resources in our advocacy. Right now, in every state and all the way to the US Capitol, AARP is advocating for the issues that affect you most. We are working to protect your hard-earned Medicare and Social Security benefits. And we're urging Congress to lower prescription drug prices, support family caregivers, and stop scams and shut down fraud. AARP is making a big difference. We are taking on Big Pharma and winning. Medicare is now able to negotiate for lower prices on some prescription drugs, and insulin copays are capped at $35 a month. We are also opposing any proposed cuts to Social Security. You've worked hard to save for your retirement. It's your money, and you deserve to keep every cent of it. We'll keep working hard to protect your interests here in Massachusetts and across the country. You'll want to bookmark your local AARP state page. For AARP Massachusetts, it's aarp.org/MA. And that's where we post about all our events, our wins, and our calls to action. You can find your local AARP news and information by going to aarp.org/local. This will help you stay informed. Today's presenters are Anna Mohammed and Dora Miller. Anna currently serves as the Food Access Director for Northeast Organic Farming Association of Massachusetts, or NOFA. Anna completed NOFA Mass's Beginner Farmer Program in 2015 and began working with the organization in 2016. The programs that the Food Access Program cover are Youth Agricultural Scientist Program and Home City Housing, the Open Pantry Community Garden Project, and smaller projects in the Boston and Springfield area. Anna and her husband live in Springfield, Mass, and they are market gardeners in the Mason area of Springfield. Dora Miller is a dedicated food access instructor at NOFA with years of experience working for local farmers, community gardens, and libraries. She has been instrumental in educating youth and families on the benefits of growing and preserving their own food. Since 2017, Dora has honed her skills in canning and has been sharing her knowledge and passion with her community. During the pandemic in 2022, she went above and beyond by visiting neighbors' homes, teaching families and their children how to make jam, thus fostering a sense of togetherness and self-sufficiency in challenging times. We were introduced to Anna and Dora by the Urban Farming Institute, an AARP Massachusetts community partner. The Urban Farming Institute, or UFI, is a nonprofit urban farm located in Mattapan, Massachusetts. Their primary focus is growing nutritious food for their community. They're also known for their farmer training program and various programs focused on health and promotion. As a regenerative farm, UFI refrains from using pesticides, herbicides, tilling, and other techniques employed by conventional agriculture. They consider themselves lucky to support the healing of the land and those that grow on the land. As you think of questions you want to ask our speakers today, please place them in the Q&A, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can before the hour is up. After today, within 3 business days, you will receive a recording, and that will also include the recipes and instructions that you hear today. You'll also receive a brief survey that we hope you will take time to complete. Now, over to you, Anna and Dora.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you, Kara, and the whole AARP team. We're very grateful for the opportunity to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts, which is having self-determination over your food choices, whether it's through gardening, whether you get food from a farmer's market, whether you barter with another friend. Being able to create your own healthy, nutritious, and safe food is very important. And this is why in the Boston area, where Sister Dora hails and where she works out very hard, and myself here in Springfield and throughout the state, we really try to promote that through soil health, through growing your own food, and then by preserving it, because when you preserve your own food, you know what you put in it, you know that it's free of chemicals, and then you have access to your own food source anytime that you would like. As Teresa mentioned, we both work with the Northeast Organic Farming Association, but we're coming to you today with another group that we work out with. It's called Sisters Who Can and Brothers Can Too. We are a cooperative of fellow food preservationists throughout the state of Massachusetts, and we do courses on all kinds of food preservation, whether it is canning, and both methods of canning, hot water bath canning and pressure canning. We do demonstrations around food dehydrating, food drying, and fermentation. So for us, food preservation covers all those means. And this is not really a new process. This is something our forefathers, our ancestors did. We're just bringing it forward here to 2024. And really, we see in the times that we're in, when you know the cost of food is high. I mean, you go into Whole Foods, like we call it whole check, because they'll take your whole check if you're not careful. Food can be expensive. And so where you can cut costs, create healthy meals, have access to healthy food doesn't have to be expensive, and you can do it for yourself. And this is one way to do it. So today we're going to start an introduction to canning. Some folks may have canned. You may have seen your grandmother or your mother do it, or your auntie. But we're wanting to open the door to canning to show that it's not dangerous. You can do it. And we wanted to start with a very easy method for those who do garden. I see some folks out there that have zucchini and tomatoes and herbs and other things. You can use this method to preserve it. It actually extends the harvest for you. And so today we're going to show you how to make easy refrigerator pickles and easy refrigerator blueberry jam. And so we all have a different specialty within Sisters Who Can, Brothers Who Can Too. I do a lot with sauces and pickling and salsa. And then my dear sister here, Dora, we call it Jam Master Dora, because she, when it comes to jams, jellies, whatever, she's the one. So she'll take us through that. I'm going to turn it over to my partner here, Dora, to take us through how to make easy refrigerator blueberry preserves. And then I'll follow up to show you how to make easy refrigerator pickles. Both of these recipes can stay in your refrigerator up to 4 weeks. So, you'll eat through it very quickly, but you can have them in your refrigerator for at least a month. So without any further delay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to my dear partner, my dear sister, Sister Dora. You go right ahead.
Thank you, Sister Anna. And hi, and thank you for having us. So like Sister Anna said, some people, they don't like to can because they are afraid. But this is an easy process. We're just gonna make it easy for everyone, and we're just gonna do just the basic refrigerator pickles. Refrigerator pickles and blueberry jam. So I already have some stuff on the stove here just to save some time. And I'm just gonna do a mixture, and I'm gonna take this camera and put it on my tripod, so you can watch the pot as I'm adding the ingredients. Okay, and I'm gonna do that now. And you let me know if you can. I'm gonna take my background off. I'm gonna put this on here. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna take this off of blur. Let's do that. Okay. None. Okay, can you guys see that?
Looks great.
Okay. Okay. So I have the blueberry jam. It's boiling right now. So these are the ingredients. You're gonna have the blueberry jam, and I have 1 pound right here. And then we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And we're gonna add 1 cup of sugar. I use the pure cane organic sugar. This is the sugar that I use. You can use whatever sugar you like. I always like to go organic, and I always like to do pure cane sugar. So I'm gonna add the 1 cup of sugar. I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice.
Sister Dora, there was a quick question about how much blueberries were you using?
1 pound. Can you hear me?
Yes, 1 pound of blueberries.
Yes.
And some good questions are coming through about those who may be diabetic. There are some, and even in the recipe that I will show you, sometimes I use agave syrup. You could use date sugar in place. My father was a diabetic as well, and so when my mom would cook, she used a lot of those alternatives. They will work in those recipes. So that was a great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So we're gonna stir this until it starts to boil. Once it starts to boil, and then we stir it for another 10 minutes. However, I have already started the process, so this is gonna boil soon. As a matter of fact, it was boiling already, and I had to turn it down. And as we stir, it's gonna get thick. It's gonna thicken. It's gonna get really thick, and that's when you turn the fire off. Let set for a minute, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, maybe a minute. Then you pour it into your jars, and then that would be it. So I'm just gonna continue to stir until this comes to a roiling boil. Turn the fire up some. Let's see. You guys see that even better now? Let's see. Out in the
And Sister
background.
Dora, did you added water to the blueberry mix, right?
Actually, I didn't add any water. I just took the blueberries and I smashed them up with a potato masher. But before I did that, I took the blueberries, I took the stem off the top. So I took the stem off the top, put them all together, and put it in this pot right here. And I smashed them up with a potato masher. Some people like to blend theirs, but I want to see chunks in mine. Some people like it fine. Some people like it where they don't taste the chunks. They just want to just get the saute of it, or just the saucy type of jam. So I didn't really put any water in it. I just used the blueberries. And I got these blueberries from a farm in Massachusetts.
So
This
ladies,
is
a couple of questions
Mhm.
that came through. One is about what are the easiest items to start canning? And then several people are asking about whether you're using fresh blueberries or frozen and whether there's a distinction between the two.
Well, I'm using fresh blueberries from a farm in Massachusetts. Um, they donated these blueberries to me just for this presentation. And we do have some items that you can use for canning. We have this right here. This is a jar lifter. This item right here, this tool actually helps you to lift the hot jars out of the water when we're doing the water bath. If I had the jars in this water, and you'll see it the next time we do this process, because we're going to be boiling the jars, and you'll see how we lift it up with the jar lifter. And then we also have other tools like the lid lifter, which is this item right here, this tool right here. And this tool right here, you can just use it to lift the lids and put the lids on top of the jars. Sister Anna may have some other tools in front of her, but these are the only tools that I have in front of me right now. But there's a whole kit that you can purchase from Amazon, Walmart. You can purchase these items, and that's how you get started. And there's a whole bunch of other items with it. Maybe Sister Anna can show you as we go into the pickles. There's also a funnel, and there's a measuring tool.
Yeah, we will go over the tools pretty extensively in the September workshop, so make sure you join us for the September one. There was a question concerning if you could freeze leftovers, and I've had that situation where I made too many for the jars that were available to me. So I have frozen preserves, and they've stayed in the freezer for a couple of weeks. You want to be careful though of freezer burn and it freezing too much that it becomes too liquid when it melts. That's the only thing, but it can't keep in the freezer. In
Yeah.
terms of the types of fruits, definitely all your berries. So your strawberries, your raspberries, gooseberries, you could do. Different fruits, you could do apples. Somebody made, I saw someone saying that they made marmalade. You definitely could do that. So most of your fruits you could do in this method to make some kind of jam or jelly that could be kept in the refrigerator until you get to the point where you do the hot water bath, which we'll go over next month.
Yes. So this is just about ready. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn down the heat, let it cool off for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to get my ladle, and I'm going to ladle them into the jars with the funnel. Okay? So let me turn this off. You know what? I'm going to let it boil for a little while longer. The more it boils, the thicker it gets. Just give me 1 second.
In terms of using a immersion hand blender, I saw this too. This is another good question. If you wanted a smooth texture or a smoother texture, if you notice, Sister Dora mentioned that some people don't want the chunks, they want something smoother, or you may want the chunks. I like my stuff chunky, but if you wanted to get a smoother appearance, then you could use one of those immersion hand blenders.
Okay, looks like it's just about done. So this is another tool that I have. We normally use a ladle, but this ladle right here is something different. This is one of my favorite ladles, and it has measurements on it, but we'll get into that at the next class. And this one right here has the measurements for the headspace right on the side. So you can get creative and order different types of tools for your canning, but the basics tools are the ones that I mentioned earlier. But you can get creative and order some nice, pretty ones that'll help you out as you're canning. And this is one of them. This is from Progressive. So I'm gonna ladle this into an 8-ounce jelly jar since we're making jam. There's an 8-ounce. There's also a 4-ounce. Now this one right here is one that I use when I have company, and I give my company a jar to take with them. So if I'm having tea, or if I'm having some tea and crackers, or just having company over, I give them a jar of jam to take with them. And this is the 4-ounce jar. So I'm just gonna ladle a little bit in each. And this is the 8-ounce jar.
So another question folks are asking is about the thickness of the fruit. How do you know when it's thick enough, whether or not you use something to thicken it, or do you just reduce it down with the heat? And the other question has to do with sterilization and whether or not it's necessary to sterilize. And then the last question still remains about fresh versus frozen fruit.
I could take the first couple, Sister Dora, and then you can maybe take the one on the fruit. So in terms of sterilizing with this process, because it's only going to be in your refrigerator, it's only meant for it to be for a couple of weeks, like 3 to 4 weeks. There's no need to sterilize. You can even use a different kind of jar. We're using the typical mason jars that have the jar, and then you have the lid and the ring. That's what's available to us right now. But say if you had a mayonnaise jar or something like that, you could do it in that. You can still do this process in that, because you're not having to worry about it sitting on the shelf for a protracted period of time. Now, if you are going to do it so that it can sit on your shelf in your pantry, that's where the sterilization comes in. And we'll talk more about this next month in the hot water bath canning. But you have to sterilize to make sure you kill off what's called the botulism spore. That is a bacteria that could not only spoil your food, but can also cause poison if you're not careful. The sterilization process is to make sure you don't have that situation, and so that your jar can sit on the shelf. That's the difference. With refrigerated pickles and jams, it just stays in your refrigerator and you eat it between 3 to 4 weeks. And this leads to a question that I see here, Teresa, concerning using wax. Now, my mother as well learned how to do that with wax. You don't have to do that with this, with the lid and the ring. When these are attached to the jar and it's placed in hot water, then there's a suction that takes place. There's adhesive on the lid that actually will attach itself, glue itself to the jar, and then all the air is sucked out of it through that process. So it takes the place of the wax. So that was a good question. The piece about whether it is fresh versus frozen, Sister Dora, I'll let you answer that. What's better, or what one you may prefer?
Well, I think, I believe you can use both. However, I like fresh because I do work on a farm and I do grow my own fruits and vegetables. However, making refrigerated blueberries and pickles, you can use, for the blueberries, you can use frozen. It'll come out just as fine, but I just like to use fresh because that's what I'm used to using. But the frozen blueberries will work good as well. And also, even when you're using the fresh blueberries, if you have any leftover, like I have some leftover right here, I may or may not can these or put these in a jar. So I might wait for this to cool down, pour them inside of a plastic bag, and then put it in the freezer. I might just do that, or I might just go ahead and just make a whole bunch more and just give them out to people. But I think I'm going to save them. I think I'm going to save it. So we're actually done with the process, and we do have a paper, a ceramic test that we do when we want to test the thickness of the jam. However, we're going to show you how to do that in the next process, the next class. You can tell when the jam is ready based on the thickness of it. So when you're stirring and stirring and stirring, and we're timing this, so we're cooking it. Once it boils, you start your timer for 20 minutes and you stir, stir, stir for 20 minutes. You'll see it start to get real thick. And then you can use a ceramic plate, put it in the freezer, put a little bit of jam on top of it, put it back in the freezer, take it out, and then you turn the plate to the side. And then if it's not dripping, dripping, dripping too much, then you know that your jam is good. That's when we're doing the water bath candy. But for this one right here, we don't need to do that. I see the thickness of I see my blueberries. I see they're thick. I can feel it when I'm stirring. I can feel the texture of it. It's really thick. And we're gonna eat this within 2 or 3 weeks. And so yeah, so that's how you really get to feel the thickness or get to know the thickness of the strawberry jams, the blueberry jams, raspberry, whatever fruit you're canning. So with that being said, are there any more questions? Because I do have a
Someone's
lot.
asking whether or not you would would a thermometer help to determine when it's ready to can? And also, I don't believe the question about what are the easiest items to start canning has been answered yet.
Okay, so we do have, you mean the easiest items or the easiest tools?
It's saying the easiest items to start canning with. So I'm assuming they mean the easiest fruits or those sorts of things.
Okay, for me, it would be pickles. It would be pickles for me. I'll let Sister Anna answer that question, because we do use the candy thermometer in a lot of you can use a candy thermometer if you like, and we'll do that when we do the water bath canning next month. And there's other things that we can use to test the temperature of the jam. And because it's more of a process for jam versus the vegetables, I would say the pickles would be the easiest process for me.
Yeah, pickles are pretty easy. If you're a brand new canner, and you're wanting to start the hot water bath, and in fact, when we show you that, we will probably, we are gonna show you a very easy recipe, but tomatoes are very easy to do. Definitely pickles, and you can pickle any vegetable. Not only do I do the cucumbers, I'm gonna show you cucumbers today, but I also do zucchini, onions, radishes. And then from there, you can can apples, you can do peaches, mangoes even, strawberries. And to answer this question, yes, the strawberries can be done the same way as you do the blueberries. And strawberries are actually very easy to work with. Most of your berries are very easy to work with. I think in terms of length of time, blueberries don't take that long. I think in total, that whole process might take 10 or 15 minutes to do in terms of the refrigerator canning. So those are some of the things that have been easy for me. In terms of mixtures, salsa is very easy to make, and you'll see how easy it is. It's easier than you think. Definitely all kinds of tomato-based things are easy to do. But for me, the easiest ones have been tomatoes, and then the fruits, and then pickles.
And then we
Sister
have a
Dora.
question about whether or not you can reuse the lids and seals if you're only doing a refrigerator method, or does the adhesive wear out?
That's a good question, and that definitely will be something we'll cover next month. I always err on the side of caution, since the door might be a little bit more adventurous than me, but generally, if I use a lid for anything, then I check the lid out first. Because remember, when you do the other process, it's gonna sit on your shelf and you wanna make sure it's in good condition. So I'll
Yeah.
test the adhesive. I'll feel around it. If it feels like it hasn't been damaged in any way, I may use it. But if I feel around and if it's been compromised in any way, I'll toss it. I won't use it. I buy enough lids, and lids by themselves are not that, they don't cost that much. So I always keep extra lids on hand so that I can use it for both preparations.
And then we have a
Yeah,
question about what is the
Same.
purpose of putting lemon juice?
Well, it just gives it just a little bit of a tang, because you know the blueberries are they're a little tangy, and then it gives it a little zest, because we don't necessarily have to use lemon juice. You can use lemon zest, which is the lemon peel. You know, take a grater and you grate the lemon peel into the jam. So you can use that as well. I don't know why they always call for lemon in the jam, but I said, okay, you know what? That's because it's a difference, because I did some with lemon before and some without. It just gives it a little more of a tang, and I believe that's it, because that's what I'm seeing. That's what I have been seeing. Um, that's what everybody else have been seeing when we're doing jams,
I think
especially.
lemon also helps preserve the bright color of whatever the fruit is as well. It's kind of a natural preservative.
It keeps it from discoloring. It does. Because when you do and thank you for that, Teresa. Sometimes when we do the hot water bath, they will tell us to add what's called ascorbic acid. We know that as vitamin C, but it's also, you can also use lemon juice because it keeps it from turning color. So when it's sitting on your shelf, and this is particularly true when it's sitting on your shelf, over time, it may lose the color. But with lemon juice or ascorbic acid, it'll maintain that color too. And it does. There are some
Right.
fruits that are very tart. Like now blackberries is my all-time favorite. I grow them. They rarely make it into the house for jam because we eat them right outside, but they could be a little tart sometimes. And so the lemon juice does help with that taste.
And
Yeah,
someone's asking about the increments. Are the increments the same with all types of berries? I'm assuming that by increments, they mean amount and timing.
well, that depends on the recipe. It depends on the recipe and what the recipe calls for. Each recipe, there's different amounts that you, like this could have easily been 4 pounds of blueberries. So are they asking? Well, I would say it depends on the recipe.
And when you are talking about berries, some are softer than others. So I know when I do raspberries, they go very quick. I have to watch them really quickly. Strawberries take a tad bit longer. Then when you get into like the marmalades or apples or things like that, they might take a little bit longer. So it does depend on the fruit too. And the
Yes.
amount. Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So let's
It
look
really
at the
comes
jars,
down,
Sister Dora.
sorry.
Let's look at your jars. You got them nice and full over there.
Yeah, so I have, ooh, this is hot. So I have these 2 jars. And what I did was I wiped the top of it off with a wet warm cloth, just so I can put the lids on and they can stick.
Mhm.
Now, to answer the question about the lids, I don't reuse my lids. However, when I'm doing refrigerated pickles or refrigerated jams, I reuse them because they're not sealed, they're not boiling, nothing's boiling, nothing's sealing. So I do reuse the lids when I'm doing refrigerator jams and pickles. I do reuse them, but I first check it out to make sure that you know the band is not there's no cracks in the band. But I normally reuse my lids for refrigerator, because also you don't have to necessarily use a mason jar. You can use a pickle jar when you're doing refrigerated jams. So and that's just what I do because it's not tampered with. I'm checking for cracks. I'm checking to see if the seal has been broken. And most time when I'm doing refrigerated strawberries or blueberries, the bands are not, it's not broken. So
Mhm.
yeah. Like this one right here, I'm reusing this one. I'm reusing this one. This is one that I did before, and I'm reusing that. And I'm gonna just put it inside my well, I'm gonna let it sit first. I'm gonna let this sit for 24 hours, and then I'm gonna put it inside my refrigerator.
The question is asking, can you use plastic lids for refrigerator canning?
You can use plastic lids for refrigerator canning. I just don't use plastic. I don't use plastic, but you can do that because you're only using it. You're only holding it for like 2 to 3 weeks in your refrigerator. So yes, I would say yes. What say you, Sister Anna?
I'm of the same mind. I don't use too much plastic when I'm doing this process because of the heat. And sometimes, plastic could leach. But because this is a shorter process and you're only going to have it for a couple of weeks, you could do it. You definitely could do it. That's more of a preference. But yes, it could. If that's what you have available, go ahead and do it. Now, of course, when we get to the point where you're doing it for your shelf, then definitely you want to use glass products and the products that the recipe mandates that says to use. So, but it's definitely doable. Definitely doable.
And somebody asked about it says something about diabetic.
Mhm.
Well,
Yes. And I mentioned about, agave syrup, date sugars. You may have some others too.
But this particular recipe that I made, it has 69 calories, 18 carbs, 0 protein, and 0 fat. Now, as far as the sugar, you can substitute the sugar for maybe stevia, or
Stevia is
maybe
good. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Stevia is good. You can also use that. That's a good one to use.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So as you can see, it was pretty easy. She did all that in probably less than a half hour. And what we're going to move into now is refrigerator pickles. And so if anyone likes pickles out there, it's not just cucumbers. I'll tell you that right now. We can also show you in another demo what other vegetables that are used. But oftentimes I will do this with cucumbers, with radishes, with zucchini. And for people who garden, oftentimes those are vegetables that are plentiful. I mean, your zucchini is coming in and it's coming in hard and heavy throughout the season. So if you run out of places to put it, you can can it, you can pickle it. And it's easier to pickle zucchini versus some of the other squashes. Really, a lot of things can be pickled this way, including grape tomatoes, which is excellent for your salad later on. I've done that both refrigerator style and with the hot water bath. So this particular recipe is just as easy as what Sister Dora showed you with the jam. We're going to use today in this recipe, we're going to use cucumbers that I just harvested from my garden, garlic, slices of garlic that's going to go in it. It also calls for apple cider vinegar. I do use raw sugar in my preparations. Cane sugar is good too. It's natural. It actually dissolves a little bit better, but I just like the flavor of it. So just to show you what the granules look like, I think you could see this. They're heavier, so you have to let it boil a little bit more. We'll have water. Some of the other spices that are used in this are red pepper flakes. That gives it a little bit of a kick. Mustard seed, And either fresh dill, if you can get it, it's a little out of season right now, or you can just use the dill, the dried dill. There's no shame in that, no harm. So in my pot here, I've already boiled on the stove my apple cider vinegar, my water. I've added the sugar. I've added some sea salt. I'm using Himalayan pink sea salt. And just I'll show you what that looks like. I've mixed it together on the stove so that everything dissolves. And now I'm gonna pack my jars and pour the brine over it. This is how easy it is. So I'm using a mason jar today. But if you had an old jelly jar that was cleaned out, or an old mayonnaise jar that was cleaned out, or even something plastic, this could work because it's going in the refrigerator. So first thing I'm gonna do is add a couple of pieces of fresh garlic. And you don't necessarily have to add the garlic, but it does give a nice taste. I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And you can go less. Some people don't like the heat. I like a lot of heat. I'm now going to add my mustard seeds. And we're just going to add 1 teaspoon here of mustard seed. Again, if you're not a fan of mustard seeds, you can cut it down, or you don't have to have it. And we're going to add some dill. In this case, we're going to add dried dill. Now, if I was using fresh dill, I would use a couple of sprigs of fresh dill. But because I only have the dried right now, I'm just going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, which will be the equivalent. Okay, so here it goes. Now, once I have those spices in, I'm going to pack my jars with the cucumbers. I've cut them into spears. You could cut them into disc if you like. And you just stack them in. They're shorter spears, so they'll kind of pack on top of each other. And I'm gonna lift the jar up so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm not being particularly neat and precise with this. If I was doing this with the hot water bath method, I'd be a little bit more precise, making sure they were all standing straight, that there was room in there, because when you're doing the hot water bath method, you have to make sure that it covers your liquid, or your brine covers all of the food, that nothing is exposed. But I'm not worried about that too much here because it's going into the refrigerator.
So there's a couple of questions. One has to do with the cucumbers that were used and the tips turned brown. What went wrong with that? And another is asking if you have to take the seeds out of the cucumbers.
Sure, great question. Well, you don't have to take the seeds out. You can leave them in, it's fine. They'll be soft. In terms of the tips turning brown, it could be that they weren't submerged enough in the liquid. Now, if it's the refrigerator pickles that we're doing now, that's not as big of a deal. But for hot water bath canning, and we'll demonstrate this for next month, everything has to be covered, because if it's not covered, that means oxygen can get in. Once oxygen can get in, then that can cause bacteria, the bacteria you don't want to set in, which will spoil your food. That's the difference. So when you're doing refrigerator pickling, it's not as bad, not as important to have everything covered. But when you're doing for the shelf, yes, you want to make sure your liquid's covering all of your food. So it could have been just some discoloration. For the refrigerator, it'll be fine. But on the shelf, that's a little different, and we'll talk about that. So now that my jar is full, I'm going to put the brine in. So I'm using a funnel. Now, this funnel is not as sophisticated as the one that Sister Dora was using. I have that one too. But I'm just using the funnel because I don't want to make a mess everywhere. I don't want the liquid to go every which way. And so this keeps everything kind of neat and in place. So I put my funnel in and I take a ladle. Now, there's no exact measurement in terms of how much brine you're putting in. You just want to make, you want to make sure that it's filling the jar mostly, because the pickles will sit in the brine and they'll begin to soak up the flavor of the brine. And what we put in the brine was apple cider vinegar, water, sugar, and I'm using raw sugar, and Himalayan sea salt. That's what made up our brine. And what happens over time, after 24 hours, the pickles soak up that flavor. And then when you go to eat your pickles, you'll taste that, you'll get that pickling effect. So I'm going to fill up my jar and top it off and get it ready for the refrigerator. And like I said, there's no, on this round, we're not trying to be very precise with this. We just
I know
wanna
you have
get-
the other camera, but did you want to turn it on?
Oh, it's not on?
Yes, right.
Well, that doesn't help. Okay,
There
there
you
you
go.
go. All right, thank you for that. Okay. And I just filled it to the top. Everything is pretty covered, so this is good to go. And I'm just using my lid, put the top on. I'm gonna let it cool down for a few hours and I'll place it in the refrigerator. It'll stay overnight, and by tomorrow, the next day, we can enjoy refrigerator pickled cucumbers. Pretty simple. You can do the same thing with cucumbers, cauliflower. Pickled curried cauliflower is amazing. That is my new thing. So if you have a lot of cauliflower out in the garden, or if you go to a farmer's market and you get cauliflower, try pickling it. It is absolutely delicious.
So we have lots of questions about the brine, and I think you did mention what you were putting in the brine,
Sure.
the red pepper, the vinegar, etc.
Mhm.
So the other questions also have to do with is vinegar instead of apple cider vinegar okay, and whether or not the brine liquid is hot, and can you do it without any sugar?
Okay, great question. So the brine, we do heat it up. We only heat it up for 10 minutes. That's enough for everything to melt. And we're talking about the salt needs to melt, the sugar needs to melt, and blend in. So it takes no more than 10 minutes. It was actually on the stove while Sister Dora was doing her demonstration. In terms of the clear or regular vinegar versus apple cider, it comes down to flavoring for this particular recipe since it's going in the refrigerator. So let's just say you just want to use the regular vinegar, or even if you want to use rice vinegar, you're going to get a different taste. That's the only difference. You will get a much different taste. And you can add different flavors to this. You know, I'm adding the pepper flakes, but I could put curry in here. I could put cumin. I could put different flavorings. So the difference in the apple cider is really boils down to the taste that you want. And Teresa, I don't know if I got all the questions there, but was there,
Yeah, some are asking, does the liquid need to be cooled before adding to the pickles?
you can add it when it's hot. If you do add it when it's hot, then let it sit for a few, maybe an hour or two before you stick it in the refrigerator.
And then regular cukes or versus pickling cukes, can you use both?
Yes, you can use both. You definitely can use both.
And
There's another
what are
question
the
about the
measurements
salt.
for the brine? They're asking.
Say that again?
What are the measurements for the brine, and whether or not you can reuse the brine, adding more veggies after the initial pickles are gone?
Okay, so I do reuse the brine, because sometimes, you know, I may have some vegetables out in the garden that I want to make like a quick chow chow, a refrigerated chow chow. So I will add those vegetables to an old brine and refrigerate those, so that's fine. In terms of measurements for the liquid part of it, it is 2 cups of cold water, 1¼ cups of apple cider vinegar, and then you want to add 2 tablespoons of sugar and 3 tablespoons of kosher salt or sea salt, whichever one you can get to. So that's the exact measurements for the brine.
And then another question is asking, why didn't you add the garlic and flavorings to the boiled brine?
You may boil it too much and the garlic can become soft. So if you put the garlic in with the cucumbers, the garlic also will take in the flavoring of the brine. It'll still have a crispness to it because you want your pickles to be a little crisp. So that's why any of your vegetables, you can just put them in cold and then add the brine. When they go into the refrigerator, they maintain their integrity, so they will be very crisp when you bite into it. I see something about low sodium. You can adjust the sodium. So if you have some issues with salt, so instead of adding, say, the 3 tablespoons, you can do 1.5 tablespoons or 1. The salt adds to the flavor and it adds to the pickling effect. It's like a chemistry. So canning, like we tell the youth leaders, is like chemistry in a way. So the salt and the vinegar work together in the pickling process, but you can surely cut it down for this process if you have issues with sodium. So that is definitely a good question.
And will the pickles be crisp if you omit or reduce salt?
They'll stay crisp. They'll stay pretty crisp. They will. So that was it. As you can see, this process was extremely fast. So if you had a lot of leftover things in the garden, or if you went to a farmer's market, or if you get a CSA, a farm share, and you get all these beautiful, plentiful foods every week, and you're trying not to let things go bad, this is a very quick method for both vegetables and fruits that will allow you to keep your food and extend the harvest for the summer. So please try this. At this point, as we've concluded both of our processes, as you can see, they're very easy. I wanted to see if there were any more questions before we ask a few questions, because we always have questions we like to ask our audiences when we complete a session. So are there any additional questions out there that folks want to add in relation to refrigerator canning?
Well, I just want to say you can do this with your children too.
Mm-hmm. It's a great
The-
family
the
activity.
jams and the jellies are really, really good to do with your children. They get so
Mhm.
excited.
They do. They do. And there's
So you
always
have-
got to be a tester for your jams and jellies.
So you have 2 questions. One is for Dora's jam, will it continue to thicken when it sits? And do grape tomatoes stay firm with this method?
Yes,
Go
it
ahead,
will
Sister Dora.
continue to thicken. It will continue to thicken when it sits, and by the time you put it in the refrigerator, it'll already be thick. So that's that. The answer to that question is yes.
Mhm. And the second question, Lisa.
What ingredients for the brine do you use for fruit?
Well, for fruit, now there's such a thing as pickled watermelon brine. Anybody that's from the South, you probably know about that. So you could use a similar brine for that. If I'm doing fruit, now I'm going to do a syrup. Or I'll let it cook in its own juices, because as you cook it down, and after adding the lemon juice and so forth, it'll create its own juice, and then I'll can it in that. So with fruit, unless I'm pickling that fruit, which you could, I'm going to use that vinegar brine for that. But if I'm doing preserves or something like that, or just plain fruit, I'll either create a syrup or let it cook down into its own juice.
And there's lots, people are using both the chat and the Q&A, so I'm back and forth, but there's lots and lots and lots of thank yous coming through. People have been very excited. They thought you all were very informative, and people are very much looking forward to the next couple of presentations. So
Well, that's great. And, as we begin to wrap up, first of all, thank you to everyone. Thank you to AARP. Thank you to everyone, especially a big shout out to the Pacific Northwest in California. I am originally from San Diego, California, so to see you folks on there, that is outstanding. And I think I saw someone on there from Springfield, Massachusetts, so got to give them a shout out. So thank you to everyone for taking time out of their day to do this
Yes,
with us.
Thank you. Yes.
And
you
as
guys
we-
said that once you do all of this, they last up to about a month in the refrigerator? Or is
Yes,
it-
about a month. They're about 3 to 4 weeks. I'm gonna tell you now, you probably like, it'll probably taste so good, you'll be lucky if it lasts a week. But it can, it definitely can last up to 4 weeks in your refrigerator. And so if you are looking in the chat, for those who are not near their chat, there are 3 questions that Sisters Who Can, Brothers Who Can too, ask every session so that we can gauge, you know, how you all did with our sessions and what you thought of our presentations. One, and you can use the chat to answer this question. Do
Sister
you-
Anna, before you do that, there's another question that we missed.
What was that question?
Can you also use these recipes for canning in hot water bath?
Yes, you can. There might be some small adjustments, but you can do it. I would go, there's a book that we both use called the Blue Book of Canning. You can also use recipes by Kerr, Kerr. Both of them will have these recipes in it. There are some small adjustments that you'll make, but you definitely can use this for hot water bath canning. But as I mentioned, there are 3 closing evaluation questions that we like to give just to chart our progress and our service to you. And that's 1, did you find this information useful to you? And you can put a 1 in the chat for yes, or 2 in the chat for no. Secondly, do you see yourself doing this at home? Do you think you can duplicate this at home? So the answer to that question, 1 for yes, 2 for no. And then our final question, do you feel like you could show someone in your household, or if you can show your neighbor how to do this? 1 for yes, 2 for no, and a 3 for maybe. So we'll add that in. And so we see everything coming through. A lot of yeses out there.
Yep.
All right, all right. Well, thank you all so much. We're very grateful to you all. We truly appreciate it.
And just, let me just interrupt you real quick I just want to run down some of the states that were here today: California, New Jersey, Georgia, Oklahoma, Connecticut, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Washington State, Ohio, Virginia, Texas, New York City, which is where I'm from, and Alaska. So, and Kansas. I missed that one, but there's so many people from around the country. That's really awesome.
That's good. That's good. And you all chose to spend an hour of your time with us, so we're really grateful for that. Go ahead, Marilyn. I see you. I was just in Maryland. All right. Right
Maryland
on.
is there, yes. Thank
All
you,
right.
ladies, so much. And everybody will get the recording. You will get the recipes, which I'm assuming it will be including the ingredients as well as the timing. And we hope to see everybody for the next webinar in September. Hopefully we'll all be nice and cool by then and ready to do some stuff in the kitchen.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye.